I want to give this disclaimer. Today, I will be discussing child sexual abuse. This is the Rhinebeck Scoop. I'm your host, Jennifer C. This is a serious episode in light of current events. The current events to which I am referring are the child sexual abuse allegations against a martial arts instructor at the Leclerc Martial Arts School. If that's something that you have no knowledge of, you can definitely research that first and then come back to this episode so you have a full understanding of the situation. Usually, you guys know this is a fun show. It's very lighthearted. We joke around a lot. We play games. That is not what's going on today. In past episodes of this show, I do joke about sex and include adult content on this show. You guys know that's a big thing I do, but always it's for the purpose of entertainment. Today is a serious topic that is close to my heart. Certain people are not going to be happy that I'm doing this episode, but in my humble opinion, I feel that a line was crossed and I would like to address it. For those who are not happy with me, I'm just telling you, I am a woman of color who is a survivor of sexual abuse, who wants to get my story out. And it's all coming from a good place so we can learn together and we can have the right intent moving forward. I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse. I was abused from age 4 to 6 by a caretaker that my parents entrusted and paid. Because of what happened to me, it caused dysfunction in relationships and career and completely shattered my sense of self and identity. I understand when you hear me on this show, I'm laughing, I'm joking. I probably come across as pretty confident in the things I say, but I've had to really work on that. That's something that, I work on a daily basis. Every aspect of my life was disrupted and stunted by the sexual abuse. I've had to deal with a ton of anger, mistrust, as well as hypervigilance. Today, at 47 years old, I work with a therapist who specializes in this type of abuse and trauma. Every day, you guys, every single GD day, I strive to exit survival mode and have the ability to lead a peaceful and functional life. I am getting there. I am happy to say that, but it takes a ton of effort and a ton of work. In my humble opinion, I'm disheartened by the current events of this community and the way in which the information has been presented. The livelihoods and lives of innocent people in our own community are being destroyed. And worst of all, I feel as though the devastation and the tragedy of sexual abuse are not being discussed from the angle that I think it should be discussed. And I will get back to that in a second. But first, I want to talk about the innocent people. As someone who's been in this awful situation, I personally blame my abuser, and I solely blame the abuser. So when this was happening to me, the abuser was a female, which people are always surprised to hear, but it was. And her husband was not in the home at the time. He was off at work. He, to my knowledge, had no knowledge of what was going on. Thus, I don't blame him. I've never blamed him. I blame her. I blame the abuser solely. Now, it's a different thing if you have a situation where people know about the abuse and they turn a blind eye. Yeah, you're 100% complicit and you should be taken to task as well. However, I do not blame anyone associated with the abuser who had no knowledge of the abuse, was nowhere near it. Let's say I had a family member who was accused of molesting a child, and I, of course, had no knowledge of it. Would you blame me? I was nowhere near the situation. So we just have to remember that going forward, that sexual abuse does a really good job of dividing people, and it does a really good job of breaking apart friendships and community and peer groups and all of that. But we can't let that happen, because if we let that happen, then guess what? The sexual abuse wins. The abuser wins. So we've got to make sure that we're supporting each other in the right way, and the blame is put on the right person or the right people. The second thing is, I feel as though the devastation and tragedy of sexual abuse, as I said, are not being discussed, in my humble opinion, from the angle of a small community. We're not New York City, guys. We're not. You can throw around these headlines in Philadelphia, New York, LA, and you can say things like, oh, this person was murdered and this person was RAPED, this and that. But here, we're talking about people we know personally. People where you're in the same, or your child's in the same class as them. You go to the same PTA meeting as them. You see each other in bread alone. You say hi, or you're very close friends. It's a different situation here. We all know each other. We're all close. And why I think a line was crossed, again, this is in my humble opinion, is why aren't the multiple hyper-local news outlets talking about resources to help survivors, or how sexual abuse absolutely decimates the child, the family, and any future relationships the child may have? No one is talking about having a community discussion of recognizing the signs of this type of abuse and how to protect all of the children here. This is a small town, and we need to treat it as such. I mean, you guys, we talk about, should we do a composting plant? Should we have a turf soccer field? Well, guess what? The most important discussion is protecting our children. That's the most important discussion. Okay, it's not about, with all due, love the composting, don't know what I think about the turf, but the whole point is that this should be the conversation, and we should not be afraid to address it. We should not be afraid to talk about it. In my opinion, it's not about the headlines. It's not about the sensationalism of sexual abuse. As a survivor, I worry when stories are sensationalized or possible misinformation spreads. It can undermine trust in the survivor's experience. When this happens, there are two results. The people who need the help don't get the help they need, and survivors are afraid to speak up and be heard, whether that means a child telling a responsible adult or an adult telling their story like I'm doing now. And that's my biggest fear. That's my biggest fear, because I don't want someone to be like me. I was born in the 70s. I went through this in the early 80s. I didn't tell anyone until I was practically dying and sick in bed, and I was over 40 years old. So I kept that secret stuffed in my body for over 40 years. And just now I'm dealing with it. I don't want your kids to be sitting in a therapist's office at 47 years old, learning how to cry. I swear to God, like, no joke. That's a skill that I'm learning right now, because I've had so many, and by the way, this wasn't my only experience with abuse. Let's just put it that way. I am sitting across from my therapist on Zoom, trying to figure out the skill of how to cry, because I have built up such a protective wall that I literally can't cry. I don't want your kids to be like that. I want your kids to grow up happy and functional and have great lives and great relationships. That's what's important to me. So we need to make sure going forward, again, we're addressing this as a small town. In this situation, the people I care about the most are the children who've been hurt anywhere at any time in our community. I want them to be able to tell a responsible adult and to receive the help they need. If there are any parents or responsible adults listening who have a child sexual abuse survivor under their care, please get them help immediately. If you are a family who has been impacted by current events, please seek help. This is trauma. This is absolute trauma. We have therapists who are specialized in trauma and abuse in this town. You can DM me privately for the names. I also have two resources: the ChildHelp National Child Abuse Hotline, 1-800-422-4453, which is available 24/7, 365 by phone or text, and the RAINN National SA hotline, 1-800-656-4673, also open 24/7. I will put both resources in the show notes. So this was a heavy topic today, guys. And it was something I really debated about doing, but I felt it was very important for me, especially as a survivor. And I hope I got my point across and my perspective across. And I really hope that we start addressing what happened in the right way. I hope we come together as a small community and we make sure that the most important thing that's protected are the children. To leave me feedback, call and leave a voicemail, 845-307-7446, or email me at comments@radiofreerhinecliff.org. You can also DM me privately on Instagram at FreeSpiritJenniferC. RBK, we need to take care of each other, especially our children. Love you, RBK. See you next week.